Confirmation bias. Your brain loves being right, so it quietly steers you toward information that agrees with what you already think. When you scroll through news or talk with friends, you naturally notice and remember the stuff that confirms your beliefs. The contradictory evidence? Your mind tends to dismiss it or forget it entirely. This happens automatically without you realizing it. That's why people with opposite views can look at the same facts and walk away more convinced than ever that they were right all along. Dunning-Kruger effect. When you first learn something new, you often feel more confident than you should. This happens because beginners don't know enough to recognize what they're missing. They lack the experience to spot their own mistakes. Meanwhile, experts do the opposite. They assume tasks are easy for everyone because the tasks feel easy to them. They forget how much knowledge they've built up over time. This gap between skill and self-awareness shapes how people approach learning and collaboration in every field. Anchoring bias. Your brain grabs onto the first number or fact. It sees and uses that as a reference point for everything that follows. A shirt marked down from $200 to $80 feels like a steal, even if it's worth $40. That initial $200 becomes your anchor. Stores exploit this constantly with inflated original prices. Job negotiations work the same way. Whoever throws out the first number sets the anchor, and all counteroffers orbit around it. First impressions stick because they're mental anchors too. Availability heuristic. Your brain judges how likely something is by how easily you can remember examples of it happening. If plane crashes fill the news for a week, flying suddenly feels dangerous, even though the actual risk hasn't changed. Vivid memories and recent events crowd out boring statistics. A friend's car accident affects your driving fears more than thousands of safe trips you never think about. This shortcut makes you terrible at estimating real danger because memorable doesn't mean common. Sunk cost fallacy. This is the trap where you keep pouring resources into something just because you've already put so much in. Your brain treats past investments as reasons to continue, even when quitting makes more sense. You stay in a bad relationship because you've already spent 3 years together. You finish a terrible movie because you paid for the ticket. The money and time are gone either way, but we struggle to walk away empty-handed. It clouds judgment in business, relationships, and daily choices. Hindsight bias. This is what happens when you look back at something that already happened and think you knew it would turn out that way. Your brain actually rewrites your memories after you learn the outcome. Before the event, the future was unclear and full of possibilities. But once you know what happened, your mind smooths over all that uncertainty. It makes the past feel obvious and predictable, even though it wasn't at the time. This tricks you into thinking you're better at predicting things than you really are. Fundamental attribution error. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you think they're a jerk. When you cut someone off, you were just in a hurry or didn't see them. This is the fundamental attribution error, where we explain other people's actions by pointing to their personality or character, but we explain our own behavior by pointing to the situation we're in. It's a built-in double standard that makes us judge others more harshly than ourselves, affecting everything from workplace conflicts to personal relationships. Bandwagon effect. When lots of people believe something or do something, we feel pulled to join them. It doesn't matter if the idea actually makes sense or if we've checked the facts ourselves. We just see the crowd moving in one direction and figure they must know something we don't. Restaurants with lines look better than empty ones. Popular opinions feel safer to agree with. This instinct made sense when following the group meant survival, but now it often just means we're copying people who are also just copying others. Negativity. Bias. Your brain treats bad things as more important than good things. When something negative happens, it creates stronger and longer-lasting memories than positive experiences of equal intensity. One insult can ruin your day even after receiving multiple compliments. This happens because our ancestors survived by remembering dangers more than pleasant moments. A forgotten threat meant death, while a forgotten berry patch just meant less food. Today, this bias shapes how we process news, relationships, and daily interactions. Recency bias. Your brain gives extra weight to whatever happened most recently. If the stock market crashed yesterday, You'll assume it'll keep crashing. If it's been sunny all week, you forget that rain exists. The latest information feels more important than everything that came before, even when the older data matters just as much. This happens because recent memories are easier to recall and feel more relevant. It's why we assume current trends will last forever, even though they rarely do. Halo effect. When someone has one standout quality, your brain assumes they have other good qualities too. An attractive person seems smarter or more trustworthy without proof. A doctor's medical degree makes you think they're wise about everything. One successful product makes you trust the whole brand. Your mind takes a single positive trait and spreads that glow across everything else about them. It's a mental shortcut that saves time, but often misleads you into seeing excellence that isn't actually there. Optimism. Bias. We tend to believe bad things happen to other people, not us. When planning a project, we assume everything will go smoothly, even when past experience suggests otherwise. We underestimate our own risks for divorce, illness, or accidents while accurately judging those same risks for others. This bias keeps us motivated and hopeful, but it also leads to poor preparation and unrealistic timelines. Understanding this tendency helps us plan more carefully and protect ourselves better. In-group bias. Your brain automatically sorts people into us and them, then favors the US. This happens even when groups form randomly, like being assigned a colored wristband. Once you're part of a group, you trust its members more, remember their good qualities better, and give them the benefit of the doubt. You see outsiders as less trustworthy and more threatening. This bias fuels everything from sports team loyalty to political tribalism. It helped our ancestors survive, but today it drives division even over trivial differences. Choice paralysis. When you face too many options, your brain struggles to compare them all. Each choice requires evaluating features, imagining outcomes, and weighing trade-offs. With dozens of possibilities, this becomes exhausting. You start worrying you'll pick wrong and miss something better. Often you just freeze up and choose nothing at all. Stores and websites see this constantly. More varieties means fewer purchases. The abundance that should feel liberating actually creates anxiety. Understanding this helps explain why simple menus and limited collections often work better. Survivorship bias. We look at successful people and companies to figure out what works, but we're only seeing half the picture. Plenty of failures did the exact same things as the winners. We just don't hear about them because they're gone. It's like studying only the planes that made it back from war to figure out where they need armor, while ignoring where the missing planes got hit. We end up learning completely backwards lessons about what actually causes success. Framing effect. The same fact can push you in opposite directions depending on how it's packaged. A yogurt labeled 90% fat-free feels healthier than one with 10% fat, even though they're identical. Your brain doesn't just process information, it processes presentation. Doctors find patients choose surgery more often when told there's a 90% survival rate versus a 10% death rate. The numbers match, but the frame changes everything. Understanding this helps you spot when you're being steered by packaging instead of reality. Self-serving bias. This is the mental habit where you claim credit when things go well, but blame outside forces when they don't. You ace a test because you're smart and studied hard. You fail because the questions were unfair or you had a bad day. Your brain does this automatically to protect your self-image. It lets you feel good about yourself while dodging responsibility for mistakes. This bias shows up constantly in how we explain our wins and losses. Status quo bias. We have a strong preference for keeping things as they are, even when changing would help us. This happens because our brains treat potential losses from change as more painful than equivalent gains. The current situation feels safe and familiar, while change brings uncertainty and effort. That's why default options on forms and settings are so powerful. Most people simply stick with whatever's already selected. Companies and policymakers know this, which is why the default choice shapes behavior more than we'd like to admit. Gambler's fallacy. This is the mistaken belief that random events somehow balance themselves out over the short term. If a coin lands on tails 5 times in a row, your brain starts whispering that heads is now more likely. But the coin doesn't remember what happened before. Each flip is completely independent, always 50-50. The fallacy happens because we expect small samples to look like long-term averages. It costs gamblers fortunes and distorts everyday decisions about risk and chance. Planning fallacy. We're terrible at guessing how long things take. When planning a project, we picture everything going smoothly and ignore past experiences where tasks dragged on. We focus on the best-case scenario instead of typical reality. This explains why home renovations always cost more than expected, and why that quick errand becomes an afternoon ordeal. Our brains prefer optimism over accuracy. Understanding this helps us pad our estimates and actually meet deadlines for once. Clustering illusion. Your brain is a pattern-finding machine, and it doesn't turn off just because the data is random. When you flip a coin and get 3 heads in a row, it feels like something meaningful is happening. But randomness naturally creates clusters and streaks. We expect random data to look evenly spread out, but true randomness is lumpy and uneven. This illusion makes us see meaning in coincidences and suspect manipulation where none exists, turning noise into false signals. Peak end rule. Your brain doesn't average out experiences when remembering them. Instead, it grabs 2 specific moments: the most intense part and how things ended. A painful medical procedure that ends gently gets remembered more favorably than a less painful one that ends abruptly. This happens because your memory takes shortcuts when storing experiences. It matters because you make decisions about what to repeat or avoid based on these distorted snapshots, not the full reality of what happened. False consensus effect. We naturally assume our opinions and habits are more widespread than they actually are. When you prefer tea over coffee or think a movie is overrated, your brain quietly convinces you that most people probably agree. This happens because we surround ourselves with similar people and notice evidence that confirms our views. The effect explains why we're genuinely shocked when others disagree with what feels obviously correct to us, making collaboration and understanding more difficult than necessary. Decoy effect. A company shows you 2 products, then adds a third option that's clearly worse than one of them but similar in price. Suddenly, the better option looks like a steal. The decoy isn't there to sell itself. It's there to make you feel smart for picking the target option. Restaurants do this with wine. Software companies do it with pricing tiers. The worst option exists just to manipulate your comparison. Spotlight effect. You trip in public and feel like everyone saw it and will remember forever. In reality, most people barely noticed and forgot within seconds. Your brain puts you at the center of your own experience, so you assume you're at the center of everyone else's attention too. But other people are busy thinking about themselves and their own embarrassing moments. This is why social anxiety often feels much worse than the actual social situation warrants.